my corporate America was a little bit different than most people's version of corporate America because it was very technical. There wasn't a lot of boardrooms and white collars and stuff like that. So, but what I didn't like was there was a lot of bureaucracy. There was a lot of decisions that weren't always, in my opinion, the best decisions for the business, but they were the best decisions for those people that made those decisions. And so I just didn't understand that. It kind of blew my mind that people didn't really want to just take over the world and everything they did. And so I said, if I'm not going to be able to fit in to corporate America, then I'm going to have to, you know, do it my way. And so that's entrepreneurship was the easiest way to do that. And, at the time I didn't necessarily have the capital to pull off these big ideas and goals that I had. And so I kind of funneled my way to home services because of that. What I didn't know until later was that I stumbled into what still remains, in my opinion, the best industry there is. Like home services it's just a strong demand from a consumer base and
Absolutely.
a fragmented marketplace from carpet cleaners to moving companies to cleaning companies and so on. There's very few other industries that you can think of where there's growing demand fueled or served by, like, again, mom and pop fragmented marketplace. And so,
Yeah.
that's what led me to starting a cleaning business of all things. I didn't know how to clean a house. I still remember telling my mother and father, one, that I was starting a business, which they were like, wait a minute, we paid for your school.
Yeah.
What are you doing? And then two, I was going to, they knew I didn't know how to clean a house. I'd never cleaned my room before. And so, yeah, it was a little bizarre early on. I loved the idea of recurring revenue. I loved the idea that it was,
Absolutely.
again, like a trades-based business. And so a lot of people who own cleaning businesses, even to this day, were just cleaning business people. They were good at cleaning and turned themselves into business owners. And I just felt like there was going to be an opportunity to do something to really disrupt this industry. I didn't know what the disruption was going to be, but I felt like there was going to be an opportunity there. And just save some money, dove headfirst into it, and opened a cleaning business eventually on April Fool's Day of all days in
Oh, wow.
2003.
Wow. Wow. Take us on that journey for a moment, Ron. And I picture I came out of a Fortune 15 company late 90s to start my first business. And, you know, I, it was funny. I remember leaving, I had covered parking downtown Charlotte, overlooking the Panther Stadium. Life was good, and I went to the tool shed, and said, okay, let's create something. And I remember that first day vividly, over 25 years ago now. The loneliness, the excitement, all the emotion kind of rolled up into one. But it's a little bit scary leaving that corporate job where you get paid every other Friday and you travel the world, like you say. That first day, just walk us through the essence of leaving that corporate job as a chemist and then cleaning that first house that day.
So I had what I thought was a really strong business plan. It was cash flow forecasting out 5 years, all these, strategic moves at certain revenue milestones. Like I had a real strong plan in front of me. And then the first day happened. And so I had hired people. So I'd hired people prior to this. Like, even though I was in my 20s, like I said, had managed this department inside this laboratory. And the employees that worked for me were 40, 50-year-old men who were highly educated, and then the 20 something, managing them. Ironically, they didn't want anything to do with management. They just wanted to do the work,
Right.
And so I was like, well, I'll do the management stuff. And so that's kind of how I found my way into that role. So I kind of thought I knew it all. Like, hey, I'm pretty good at this. People seem to like my leadership and so on. And so I hired these housekeepers and said, let's go. Here's how you do it. See you Monday.
Yeah.
And so Monday arrived, and I'd hired two people because it's two maids and a mop. You just need two people, right? Well, one only showed up. So it was one maid and a mop. And so, I'm like, whatever, I'll just do it. And like, this is kind of weird because I've never hired somebody before that didn't show up for their first day, but maybe that's just bad luck. And so I said, I'll go do it. We had two homes to clean that day. They were both complete nightmares for me because I didn't know what to do. I'd not really thought through that part. And so I had to sort of wing it, and I'm sure disappoint the customers that we had at the time. Um, and from that day forward, I said, okay, I got to learn from this because everything I had planned on my first day was promotion. Like I was going to be grassroots. I was going to be talking to real estate agents. I was going to go out and even reach out to other home service companies that were similar in what and we could maybe piggyback off one another and generate revenue. And I had all these ideas, and I found myself cleaning homes all day. And so I said, this isn't going to work. I can't be the practitioner
Yeah.
every single day. And so I pulled myself out of the solution and said, that's it. And so it literally was the first and last day that I ever cleaned a house. And I'm sure our customers are thankful for that. But
I appreciate the vulnerability on that, man. It's I guess a humble beginning.
well, yeah, it gets even crazier. So the next 2 years, I proceeded to lose money every single day, just bled red ink, and that was um, not just 2 years. It was like a hard 2 years because it was a cleaning company on the Gulf Coast of Florida. And so on the weekends, we would clean these, condos and homes for all the tourists to come in and out of town. On the Monday through Friday during the daytime, we were cleaning homes. In the morning time, before 8 o'clock, in other words, we would clean up offices. And then after 5 o'clock, we would continue cleaning other offices around town. And so it was, while I wasn't picking up brooms, it was a very time consuming endeavor. And then you do all that, and at the end of the day, the reward you get is red ink. It's tough, and so vision to me, that's probably an overused word in business nowadays, but it was really what fueled me. It's what made me think that this was all worth it, because today I lose money by working 10 hours, but today is a step towards the bigger goal, which for me at the time was to scale the brand across the country. So I knew that step one was to build a profitable, scalable business model. And everything I did was experimentation. And at some point, I figured that my failures would turn into successes. And eventually it did. It took me 2 years to make money, but I finally made some money. And from that point forward, we started growing and opening additional locations across the Southeast.
Wow. Ron, this thought just occurred to me as you're telling that story. I don't think I've shared this publicly. So bear with me, if you would. My first job out of college, I was fortunate and blessed not to have college debt. My parents, took care of that. But first job, the very low salary, didn't have any money, trying to buy a car, furnish an apartment, all that kind of stuff. In my my first job out of college was my salary was $12,000 a year, which is really hard to make a car payment and put food on the table and buy an occasional cold beer. So I picked up a second job, and my first job was in technology, right out of school. It was a great company, just a low base salary, and so to pick up extra money uh, for my car payment or beer or whatever, I went out and linked up with the janitorial service, and I would at night clean office buildings, and it was fine. But during the day, from 7 to 7, I had a suit that was required by the company, and then at 6 or 6:30, I take off the suit, put on my shorts, grab my rag in my in my shorts and in the back pocket, and go clean these office buildings. And that was pretty humbling, actually. Um, the one funny story to that is one of the companies that I was calling on in my technology job, my sort of my real job during the day, I had to go clean that office, and it was late, 8, 9 o'clock at night, and I was actually in the VP's office, the office I'd been in a few days earlier, and he comes back in the building. True story. And I sort of like hid behind the door, like he's going to be really confused to know me in my technology suit versus having a dustpan in my hand. That
Sure.
so the only time it ever happened. But and I haven't thought about that story in gosh 35 years. But you just reminded me of you know,
Yeah,
having you do what you do, right? When you start a business, you do what you do to make it work.
that's right.
Yeah.
You do it because you believe in what you're doing. You know,
Yeah.
there's a purpose behind it. And I think whether you're cleaning homes or, technology or whatever it might be, work has to matter,
Yeah.
So if your work matters, then you'll keep doing it. So
Yeah.
that's why we do those things.
Yeah. Very cool, man. Very cool. Well, I've heard a little bit of your story in the past, a couple conversations that you've had that I really enjoyed. One of the points that one of my takeaways in a previous conversation that you had was you personally bankrolled your company, two maids and a mop. How difficult was that, and was it a shoestring operation?
Um, uh, uh, According to what you call a shoestring, probably in today's world, it would be a shoestring, but I saved over the course of about 7 years, $150,000. This number seemed appropriate to me,
Wow.
so there was a little bit of science behind it, but mostly it sounded like $150 million to a 24-year-old with no money, and so I put this plan together in my head and I said, let's go. And then a few weeks later, I even set up this like savings account, separate savings account. And that was where all this money was going to end up. Well, 2, 3 weeks later passed and it was still $0. And I'm like, that's a long way from $150,000. I'll never get there. And I started feeling like I was losing, like this, like despair kind of came over me. So about that time, I'm a huge reader, like super nerd when it comes to especially business books. And so I'd read this book on habits, and there's been a bunch since then actually that even take it a little bit farther. But basically, it said, hey, if you've got this big goal, um, figure out what the plan is to get there, create daily, weekly habits to slowly but surely walk your way towards that bigger goal. Celebrate the little victories along the way, and then that way each little victory is or each little goal is more digestible than this huge goal.
Yeah.
And then at some point you'll look backwards and you'll be there, and so I'm like, that sounds pretty easy. I can do that, right? And so that's what I did. And so I put this plan together where I had to save a few $100s a week. And if I could, find this extra, $300 or $400 a week, then I would deposit that into my savings account on Friday afternoons. And then I would go celebrate the victory. And so sometimes I hit that, most times I did. But my entire week, my 7-day work week, or not work week, but calendar week, was a mission where I would drop off this money on Friday afternoons. And so part of that was just from good old saving, like made money from job, whatever's left over went to the account. That wasn't enough. And so I had to get other jobs like you did. I had to get these other jobs on nights and weekends. I even started little small businesses. My kind of craziest business that seemed really ridiculous at the time, it turned out to be a profitable enterprise for me. I was playing golf with some friends one day and said, hey, there's opportunities here on this scorecard. If you play golf, you get the 18-hole scorecard. And so I went to the golf pro afterwards and I said, hey, if I give you these scorecards for free, will you take them? They said, of course I will. So I said, well, I'm going to sell ad space on there and that'll be how I get paid, And so they said, whatever, go do it. And they didn't really believe me. And so I went out and I sold ad space to banks and little small sandwich shops and whatever, attorneys and everything that were members out, at the course in Atlanta at the time, and found a printer who would print the golf course scorecard, delivered it to them, made a few dollars, started going to all these other area golf courses around Atlanta, enrolled some of my college buddies to be my salespeople. And all of a sudden, we had this like printing business for golf courses.
Love it, man. I love it.
Yeah, like just the hustle, trying to save a few dollars. And so every single week I would drop off this money and I had these like various trophies I would give myself. If I just met the goal, then I would go have a cold beer with a buddy, which doesn't seem like a huge victory for a lot of people. But if I didn't hit my goal, there was no beer for me, because I needed to save that dollar. If I were to really trounce the goal, then I would go reward myself with a round of golf that weekend. I was not married or kids then, so golfing was on the table then.
Yeah.
And then, there were bigger things along the way, but slowly but surely, I found myself, racing closer and closer to the top. And so I finally got to a place where I eventually hit it, you know,